This is a section on how to use Mozilla Thimble. So let's start introducing from the left to the right. What you need to know is that these files here, the HTML and the CSS, affects the code over here, which is basically a little preview window of a web page. So usually this would be on two separate files, maybe in like Text Wrangler and Sublime, and you'd go between this and a web browser. But what's cool about Mozilla Thimble is that it allows you to look at your code and your preview window in a nice, easy to use format. So this is what we're going to be using. Let's talk about some of the features. On this little line here with the editor, what you'll see is you have an undo button, a redo button, a button for code, and some settings. So the undo button, I'm sure we've all seen this in other things, but basically if I wanted to add some code where I wanted to say underneath my cool website, I wanted to say something like a smiley face, but then I changed my mind. All I would have to do is click undo. And let's say I can't make up my mind. Let's say I want to see the smiley face again, but I don't want to type the smiley face. I would just click the redo button. This is pretty similar to other interfaces I'm assuming that you've seen, but just in case, those are the undo and redo buttons. But for now, I'm going to get rid of this code. So what you need to also know is that this button is something we're going to do later on in the things, but it allows us to add code snippets. So if I click on it, you'll see a bunch of options, and these options are something that we're going to play along with later once we get more familiar with the language, but I'm just letting you know that it's here. What's also cool about Mozilla Thimble is that we have a lot of options. If you click on this gear, we can change how this little interface works. For example, I can increase the text size. Say I'm having a hard time reading, this might be really helpful for me. I can make it smaller. Let's say I prefer to have a more compact view. You can do that too real easily. Click on it again. We also have a color theme option. If I click on it now, right now it's set to the nighttime theme. If I click on it right now, it gets to a brighter theme. So your background will be white and the color of your text changes. And this might be better for your eyes depending on where you are. For me personally, I prefer the dark side. So I'm going to click on it again and keep this black background with colored text. Another option is whether or not we want our long lines to wrap around or if we want them to continue on going. So for example, if I turn it off, what we'll see is that my text is cut off by this right bar, and if I want to see all my text, I have to scroll to the right. And some people don't like that. Like personally, I prefer to have everything in one column down. So I'm going to click on this again and have the wrap long lines option on, meaning that instead of me having to scroll left and right, everything just moves down. Another option that is on here is the allow JavaScript. We're not going to be working with JavaScript for this tutorial, so it doesn't really affect us to keep it on or off, but just in case, keep it on, but also know that we're not going to do any JavaScript for these tutorials at all. The setting below is called Show Whitespace. So if I click this on, what we'll see is that little dots appear, and what these dots do is that they help us count the indents. This is important for organizing code later on, especially if you're working with tons of nested loops or tons of nested code. But for now, I'm going to keep it off. If you want to keep it on to help you keep track of your code, you should, and I highly encourage it. Another option that we have is the auto close tags. So what this means is that you have the option of when you write code for the opening and closing tag to appear for you. Meaning, if I decided to create some code and I decide to write H2, what's nice about this is that the computer can see that I'm typing in H2 before I even finish. So let me do this again real quick. So I start to type H2. and then I finish it off, the closing tag is put there for me. So what's nice about this is that I don't have to worry about typing in the closing tag. I can just worry about writing code, and that might be faster for me at the time. What is also nice is that since we're learning about code, we don't have to worry about typing in everything. We can have some help. So I'm going to recommend that we keep it on. Because for example, right now the opening and close tags are there. The smiley face is appearing. My code is working. Let's say I delete the code and I decide to turn the auto close tags off. What will happen is as I start to type and I finish my opening tag, this pink stuff down here, this means that I have an open tag somewhere and that I have an error somewhere in my code. So if I write my smiley face and I forget to put a closing tag, it's not going to work in our code. And so sure, a solution could be remember to put all your code and then put in the right space. But since we're learning, I highly recommend that we keep this option on. I recommend that we have the auto close tags on. All right, everyone? And so the autocomplete code and the XML SVG, those are things I don't want you to worry about either. But just know that these are options, and the further you go on with coding and doing more things with Mozilla Thimble, these are options for you later on. The next section we're going to talk about is this preview over here. So like I mentioned before, the HTML is the code that controls this, which is basically a preview of a web page. We have a lot of options to have here as well and really customize our experience. For example, right now I have the auto on. And what this means is that there is a preview auto refresh happening. That means that I don't have to worry about updating my other browser.